It is 7:44 here on this Friday morning wake-up call. It's time for Friday with Fuzz, so I'll toss it over to Mr. Michael Greene.
Thank you, Derek. In studio with us today is Elgin's Chief of Police, Jeff Swoboda. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I understand you won't be here the next 2 Fridays.
Yes, we will have Commander Anna Lally. What's that?
Guest conductors.
Guest conductors, sure. We'll have Commander Lally and then Deputy Chief Wolf the Friday after.
Friday after. Nice.
So yes.
Well,
so absence makes the heart grow fond.
I said you're going undercover, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Gotta go.
Have you ever done that? Have you ever gone undercover?
For very short cases. I laugh because if Jeff Adam was working, he would tell you the story. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
I don't have time.
You're not going to go into it.
No.
Well, maybe we'll have to have Lieutenant Jeff Adam on again.
The way I remember, the way he remembers it are way different. And
right.
How important the case was very different. So
I have the utmost respect. I can't even. Yeah. That just to me is crazy. Just how far they can go under and.
Absolutely. And then next Friday would be perfect because that's Anna Lally. That's what she did for a number of years.
We'll talk about
worked
that
in the drug unit. I'm not sure how many years, but maybe 7, 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah, undercover.
That's a long time.
Yeah, so she would be the perfect person to ask about all that stuff.
Well, we had a busy week. Not so bad stuff, but you had a couple of arrests. One was the result of a search warrant, and it sounds like maybe some community information led to it. We can talk about that. Was at the Buena Vista Towers on Tuesday night?
Yeah, we did a search warrant talking about drugs. We did a search warrant and for narcotics. Also, a weapon, a handgun was recovered, and came in as most do as complaints, especially in apartment complexes. People are obviously living much closer together. So when things are awry like that, or people are selling drugs or involved in criminal activity, many people know about it. So we're very happy to get the tips that we got and put together a case, and eventually did a search warrant again where we got cocaine and a handgun, and we were able to put the people out of business for a little while.
847-695-4195 is the Elgin tip line. You can also text 847-411. Elgin PD at the beginning of the text message, along with the message and or tip information, gets it to you and scrubs it as you've described it in the past, so that you don't see who the sender was.
Right.
Although you wouldn't mind talking to him, and sometimes I think, can you send back information? Like, can you please contact us? Further. I mean,
yes. Yeah, we've done it. It goes back through it, right? And we do ask people if they can, and we can still figure it out where we don't need to use their name for anything. But sometimes it's just some clarification that we need as far as what information they were giving us. So it doesn't mean if they give us all the information that it's going to show up in the police report. We're going to do all that, but it is nice if we can do a follow-up conversation, because sometimes they'll tell us an address, and sometimes just a simple of when's it happening, is it the front door or the back door they're going to, is there a day of the week that you're seeing more people, that type of stuff. So it's nice when we do have somebody we can follow up with.
With any of the cases, we've talked about this over the years, but it still never ceases to amaze me. It's the amount of charges, and I guess we talked about, you're looking at Burton has 7 or 8 different charges, and Clark in this case had 5, and the purpose of that again would be,
well, they're all each separate violations. So for drugs, say. Just possessing
redundant,
them,
right?
So just possessing them is possessing the drugs is one charge. Possessing the drugs and then packaging it a certain way where it appears that the person is selling the drugs is another charge.
Resellers,
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a whole other charge. Same things with weapons. Possessing the weapon, being a felon and possessing the weapon, possessing a weapon with serial numbers that are filed off. All of those things become different charges, and so. As we're going through this, they will many times, if the case goes as planned, as well as we would like to have it planned, towards the end they might be combined into one sentencing, and if either a plea deal or goes to trial. But one charge may be thrown out for some type of technicality or some type of issue. But yeah, it's not uncommon to have multiple charges. A person does one thing, but they really violated the law in many different ways, and so it gets charged for each one.
Does it make it any easier or more difficult for the state's attorneys or the assistant state's attorneys to then work with more charges or less charges?
Well, if you only have, if there's a charge on and there's an issue with it, or it comes up before a judge, or there's one thing that a defense attorney is trying to argue, and that's your only charge, then it probably does make their job a little bit more difficult, type of thing. But it's again, if you're speed, we've had cases where, and I think we'll get to one as well, where somebody takes off on the police and in the meantime, they've blown multiple stop signs. They went through a red light. They've went above the speed limit. There's a reckless driving, which kind of captures all of them. But there are times we'll go back and say, you blew this stop sign, you blew this stop sign, you blew this stop sign, you went through this red light, you were speeding, and so we go through all of those charges to hold the person accountable for all of their acts. Because if you just did one charge, reckless driving or something, and an issue came up with that one charge, it's at least the person needs to be held to account for something. So it's in some ways it's a safety net, I guess, but ultimately they violated all those different statutes, so they get charged with them.
Yeah. The case you were referencing was past Sunday night. Got a call through 911 about a person waving a gun from a vehicle in the area of South Street in Lillian, and officers not too long after that spotted the vehicle, Wing and McLean, attempted to pull him over, and he decides, I'm not stopping, and continued on. And from the sounds of it, and it was funny because one of our office personnel here came in and said, hey, did you hear anything about they closed down up by Bonkoski? I'm like, no, I didn't hear anything about that. Derek put 2 and 2 together and said, hey, that's that one you were just talking about with the Sleepy Hollow Road just north of I-90. Put 2 and 2 together. Yeah, it had to be it. So this, it looks like he got out after rolling the car and then continued to run or flee attempt. So you talk about just in general, I guess maybe more along the lines of when somebody does flee, does it heighten, what else is going on? Because in this case, it doesn't sound like really there was anything more to it than just didn't want to stop, and then there's a lot more charges that go along with it.
Yeah, that is something that each officer has to make those. A lot of things go through an officer's head as soon as they turn on the lights, and the person then, accelerates, starts making some quick turns. We're always training. We have very strict policies on when we'll pursue and when we won't. And so when somebody does take off on an officer, they have to do a checklist in their mind. Okay, what am I stopping the person for? What are the roadway conditions? How much traffic is going on? Am I near a school zone where kids might be crossing the street? And all these things go on. So officers then make that decision. Then supervisors are also listening to the radio, and then they also do their check down as well. Because the last thing we want, say is simple speeding. Somebody's going and they're speeding down the road, and you go to make a traffic stop, and they don't pull over. Well, there's part of you that says, we can't just let every speeder go. But then there's the other side that says, is it worth going 80 miles an hour down, a side street and blowing stop signs where some innocent person potentially could be, or more than likely will just be driving around? How far do we want to go with it? And so we'll start many pursuits, and when I say started, we turn on the lights and the person takes off, and the officers generally just on their own will say, not worth it, not going to go. Especially if you have a license plate, you have a description of the driver, we'll be able to figure out who was driving the car. Unless it was just a fresh, stolen car. The problem with that is whatever the person's running from, or took off from in the first place, won't be there when we get them. So maybe they do have a warrant or they didn't want to stop. By the time we get the person, there won't be the drugs in the car, the gun will be gone. So we go through those things. We'll turn off our lights, and in cases like this, try to make a stop. And if the person takes off, then eventually stop the pursuit. But still know they're heading a certain way. If you've already run the license plate, know where they live, start going that way. Other officers will start showing up. And unfortunately, like this one, many of them end in the person crashing their car. And the hope is that no innocent person is hurt, and then secondarily also that person themselves who chose to take off, they're not hurt as well.
I'll ask you a question I'm pretty certain you won't know the answer to. You have any idea on how many stops are attempted and completed, or how many are called off? Do you happen to know? I mean, rule of thumb, is it 90% of the people actually do stop, or?
Oh yeah, I don't know the number, but if I had to, out of every 100, boy, you'd probably have to even go further than that. Out of every probably, 500 traffic stops that are made, one person doesn't. I mean, because the overwhelm, and nowadays again with technology and cameras and who's driving your car, where we just at, right? Exactly.
That would be my thought.
Yeah, the overwhelming majority are people do just pull over.
You'd officially release your crime stats, which we had talked about last week, but officially released yesterday. Anything changed from last Friday to today? It sounded about the same, where it sounded like 48 extra crime reports, and it was what, a 2% increase?
2% increase, yep. And total of 48 crimes. So this year we had 2,200, and so last year I think it was 2,152 or something. So that the Part 1 crime is up 2%, and of that, as we go through each one of the numbers, there's a couple that are small increases, but the one that's a pretty significant increase is retail, or actually thefts, and the significant portion of those are actually retail thefts. So those are attributed to a lot of the big box stores up on Randall Road, and working with the retailers.
Press release had stated, I think, the Walmart, right, accounted
the
for
number one.
51% of the reports of that.
Yeah, and and that's one. It's kind of like driving under the influence arrests. When it's up, does that mean it's happening more?
Right.
Are we just more vigilant with it? What are There's a lot of ways those numbers. That's the thing about statistics. And that's why when we do these, we always say, this by no means is means great job, bad job. They're indicators of, okay, are we doing some of the things that seem to be working? I had an old sergeant one time when we were talking about statistics. He said, you know what? Yeah, but if I put 1 foot in boiling water and 1 foot in ice cubes, on average, I'm pretty comfortable. Okay, that's
yeah.
Sure. So with statistics, we're always just looking for what's going on. One of the ones that we talk about as well as another negative was the shots fired calls around the city. That those are up, and they're up I think 9% across from last year. Now they're not as high as they were a few years ago, but they're still higher than they have been about the past I think 3 to 4 years. So what's going on there? Why are we seeing more of these shots fired calls? What's happening? Some are attributed to that we can put on that they were somehow involved in a gang, whether the witnesses tell them or a victim stayed behind and watched more things, knew what happened, knew the person who did it. So there's those things that then we can say, okay, it was gang related, and there's other ones we just don't know. And they may be gang related, they may not be gang related. So those are up as well. So we look at them and say, okay, what's going on with that? What do we need to do? We plot them on a map. Where are they occurring? And so we talk a lot about that. And then on the positive side, there were just some 20-year lows that I think show again that we're on the right track with some things. Violent crimes at a 20-year low. So we talk about Part 1 crime, which are the 10 crimes that the FBI compiles through the Uniform Crime Reports. And every department sends those in, and they report on them so they can give crime, nationally what's happening. And of those, there's 4 that are but they are considered violent crimes. That's the homicides, the robberies, the criminal sexual assaults, the aggravated batteries. Those crimes are what they call violent crime. And most people say, when you look at it, okay, Part 1 crime is important, but violent crime is like, those are the really bad things. Not that thefts are good, but there's just everything's relative, right? So what's more of serious crime? So these violent crimes have actually got down to a 20-year low, and I'm trying to remember the reduction from last year, but it's not 17%, 11% from last year, and again down to a 20-year low for violent crime. So that's very good news. Our residential and commercial burglaries were down last year, and those were pushed down to a 20-year low as well. So there are some positives that are working, and again, I think this shows some progress, but by no means does it show success. And I mean, wow, ta-da, there it is, we did it.
Right.
It's I would say
a lot of it awareness and just communication, reporting the crime in the first place. I mean, there's so much that goes into it. But speaking of some of the communication that you guys have, you had a few events this past week I wanted to talk about. Saw a picture of the Coffee with a Cop from I think it was last night?
Last night?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I was pretty amazed at how many people. I mean, it was a big room, and there were a lot of chairs in there. This was at the Art Space Lofts, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was last night. It went longer than we expected, but it was great. There were probably, I didn't count, but if I had to guess, maybe 50 people, which is a great turnout for something like this. And it's only our second one, and this is something that it's a national program, but Commander Lally saw this and thought, here's another avenue, because the chiefs meetings are nice, but it makes people come down to the station, and we have a group that talks about issues. This one we go out to the community, and the first 2 have been here in downtown Elgin. Yeah. So it makes it easier for people, and it's just more, not that it's more relaxed, but you're not in the police station, so we're just sitting around. It's nice at the art space over here, downtown Elgin. And we had, like I said, close to 50 people, and people who came and, many good things to say, but also some things, what are some of the issues going on in the police department, not just in the general discussion, but also kind of sidebar discussions, things on militarization of police, body cameras were talked about, but just strategies. People just asking officers questions about, what do you like about your job? What are the hard parts about your job? And we had one of our Jim Rapp from our traffic division. We had some of our patrol officers there, and Russ from our records department was there. Karen Flanagan was there for CERT, which is coming up as well. So we had a lot of people there, and I really like having the officers there because I've said it a million times. I go to events and people say, great job, the department, boy, your police department's doing a great job, and I want the officers there because they're the ones doing the great job, and so it's nice for the people to say it right to the officers. So it was nice for them to hear. It was a good event, and again, you'll talk to people, mostly sidebars, and not everybody agrees with things that are happening in the police department. And so I think what I really like about neighborhood meetings is just communicating with people, and what I see, and what frustrates me when you see things on TV where it doesn't go this way. I was able to have conversations with people that don't agree with me on everything, or the police department, but I can tell you there are people who care about the city, they care about the police department, and so their heart's in the right place. And although
they wouldn't be bringing it up if they did.
Exactly,
you guys are both after the same thing.
Exactly.
Right.
And I always say, I make decisions on what I see is best at that time, but by no means do I think that what we're doing or what I'm always doing is the right thing. There's different perspectives, and so there are people who disagree with that. But what I love is having a conversation with somebody face to face and explaining, here's what we're doing. And they say, well, I disagree. I don't know why you're doing that. And I say, you know what?
You're the wise.
What's that?
Here are the wise.
Here are the wise.
You can say.
And they have valid points as well.
Yep.
And so there's very few cut and dries where it's an obvious answer on things, especially when you're dealing with policing and whether it's people and how calls are handled. And so I just like it because I really leave those things energized. And like I said, I love talking with people that whether they agree with me or disagree with me, they're out and about. They're sitting in the table. And they're discussing things, and that's the time to discuss issues is when you can have calm over coffee and talk about things versus in the street yelling at each other or in a city council meeting where you can't have a back and forth. It's like, let's sit down and talk. And I give a lot of credit to people who show up like that and will look at the police department and say, why do you do this? I disagree with this. So it was a great night.
You're listening to WRMN, AM 1410 in Elgin. We're here with Elgin's Chief of Police, Jeff Swoboda. I'm going to go a couple more minutes over. We want to talk about, you already kind of alluded to it, and that would be CERT. That is coming up. That is the Citizens Emergency Response Team.
You're good.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Karen Flanagan, I know, heads that up.
Yep, she's the head of that for the police department.
And what's going on with that? I know it starts on a Tuesday, February 10th, but can you tell us a little bit about what CERT does and their importance to the community?
The importance, I'll take that one first. They're extremely important. They come out at all hours of the day and night, weather conditions, help out the police department, but really what they're doing is helping out their community, from directing traffic to at major scenes, just sometimes bringing water or relieving somebody who's directing traffic so they can use the restroom or warm up, and they just do just a great job. And they're always around. They showed up. There were a good probably 5 to 10 of them at the meeting last night, and so Karen does a fantastic job working with them, training them on everything from after emergency strikes, whether that's a tornado, whether that's a flood, whether it's just a power outage where power is going to be out for 10 hours or 24 hours. What are things people can do? And the whole point of it is training people before disaster strikes or before they need to have all this information so that once something happens they can be there. And these people are great because they not only learn about how to do things to help themselves and their families, but then once that's secure, then they go out and help the community and get them safe and get them the supplies that they need and what they can do. So anybody wants to do this, the CERT program starts on the 10th, and it's just a great program.
How long does it run? Is it a week long?
I think it's a night a week, but I think it goes for about 5 weeks or so. Yeah.
And then I'm going to put you in the spot here. What are the 3 L's for 2015, John?
The 3 L's are if you, first of all, lock up your belongings. Secondly, light up your property. And the third one is let us know if something's going on. That came up yesterday when we released the crime stats. We did a short video, and we were coming up with I was trying to figure out how to remember all the things to talk about in the video. And Christy Hilton came up with, as I was saying things, I kept saying some of these same things. She goes, how about just naming it the 3 L's? Like it, lock it, or not like it. Like it. See, now I'm messing with it. Lock it up, light it up, and then let us know. But there's so much stuff. It kind of got mixed up with my if you like it, lock it. But so it's just a cute little thing we're saying, the 3 L's. But I think going into 2015, if we continue on this path of working together, keeping track of your own property, but then letting us know when something's wrong in your neighborhood and working together, I think we'll continue to drive down this serious crime here in Elgin and make this community even better.
Chief Swoboda, thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
And we'll miss you in the next couple of weeks, but capable fill-ins.
Yes, absolutely. More than capable.
And sometimes
might not be welcome back.
I was going to say, we've had Chief Wolf for. I said, Jeff doesn't come back. That's fine.
That's fine. Okay, Jeff, who's that?
Who's that guy?
Yeah.
All right, well, have fun.
Thanks, guys.
You're listening to AM 1410, WRMN.
And Elgin.